Hi, this is Miss Brown, and today I'm back with a lesson with you on the mollusks, Phylum Mollusca, so kingdom Animalia, and now we'll be talking about Phylum Mollusca. And these are often called shellfish, and they're really not fish. And they're soft-bodied animals. They may have some protection with the shells, why we call them shellfish. Now, looking at the top of your organizer, I've done some of this first part yourself. I've typed it in there at the top. So you see it's the second largest invertebrate phylum. They live in freshwater, marine, and terrestrial. They're found all over. They may have a calcium carbonate shell that's secreted by the mantle, and the mantle's inside there. And they need limestone in their habitat to get this shell. They get that out of the water in their habitat. We have different kinds of shell types. We have univalve, that's one like a snail. There's bivalves that have two pieces like a clam or an oyster, and some have an internal shell strip like we find in the squid. Now, I've also told you they all have this thing called a muscular foot. It's not exactly like yours. Beside where it says foot functions, right there in the typed part, put locomotion, burrowing, and capturing prey. Now, significance to humans, we'll get to that in a second. Somewhere in your margins, I left this off. I want you to put the visceral mass. Put in quotations, it's the guts. It's the internal organs. It's what's inside there. It's the stomach, heart, and reproductive organs are all in there together. The visceral mass. And then go to significance to humans up there. Food source, gem source. Of course, we know about pearls. Bait, and they cause crop damage. That is some kind of significant to humans. A lot of slugs cause problems with your crops. So let's move on down to our different classes we have listed here. You've got gastropods, bivalves, cephalopods, and we'll get to polyplacophora in a moment. First, let's look at the gastropods, the first list there. So for examples, you have snails and slugs. And then for foot, I want you to put belly-footed. They're belly-footed. Remember, gastro means belly, poda means foot. So they carry on, they move on that foot, and they also eat there too. That's where the food comes in. All right, shell. Snails have univalve and slugs have none. Feeding habits, they consume plants and algae, and they have a scraping tongue to help them get the food. It's called radula. So they move along scraping. If you've ever seen these inside an aquarium, they keep the sides of your aquarium all clean and algae-free, and you can see that radula. It's rough. It's almost like the beater bar on a vacuum. It helps to pull things up so they can pull it up into their feeding system. Habitat, we find these terrestrial. There's land snails and slugs. I'm sure you've seen those outside. There's freshwater snails. And in marine, we find snails and slugs also in marine life. Respiratory organs, the aquatic ones have gills, and the terrestrial ones have a long air pocket. And other notes, they are a food source. There are people that like to eat snails. Not so much in America. In France, they're called escargots. I'm told, I've never tried them yet. I might one day. I've told they taste a lot like clams or oysters. And of course, you have slugs and crop damage. So let's move on to the next one, the bivalves. Bi meaning two, so it's a two-piece shell. All right, examples are the clam, mussel, oyster, and scallop. And all those are good to eat. Okay, it has a wedge-type foot like a hatchet, and it helps them dig into the sand so they can get down to that sand to hide, hide as a habitat to stay away from predators. All right, the shell, it's got a two-piece bivalve shell that's secreted by the mantle, and it grows from this area called the umbo. And the feeding habits, they're filter feeders. They eat plankton. And they have two siphons that stick up out of the sand. They have an in-current siphon that brings in water and an ex-current siphon that sends out water. Their habitat, you can find them in freshwater. They're called mussels, and that's what mussel shoals is named after. They just spelled it incorrectly. And then in marine, we find the clams, oysters, and scallops. Okay, respiration, they're all aquatic. They all live in the water, and they all have gills for gas exchange with water. They're a food source. They form pearls. There's natural ones. They're an accident of nature. What happens, a little piece of grit gets in there, and he keeps putting that pearly layer over it to protect himself because it's an irritant. Or culture, these are what most pearls are that you see now. They're man-made. They're induced. They're less valuable because they're man-made. Now, moving on to the cephalopods, the third list. This is where you have your examples are the octopus. That's an octopod, meaning 8 feet, and a squid, which is a decapod, meaning 10 feet. Their foot is really, their tentacles or arms, it really isn't a foot. Cephalo meaning head and pod meaning foot. So that's where that comes from. The shell type, the squid has an internal shell strip and the octopus has no shell. All right, feeding habits, they're predators. They have a beak that tears the food and they have a radula to scrape it out. And their favorite diet is lobster and fish. They're exclusively marine. We only find these in the ocean. The octopus hides in rocks and coral reefs, and the squid is an open water swimmer. All right, their respiratory organs are all aquatic and have gills. Now, notes of interest. They're jet propelled as they force water through a siphon that pushes them along. They have an ink sac, and that helps hide them, helps them escape from predators, and also helps them to sneak around and catch food. Has a very well-developed eye, similar to yours. They are the most intelligent invertebrate, and the giant squid can be up to 20 meters, and that's roughly, for us Americans, 60 feet long. So that's a large animal. Now, somewhere down at the bottom, I want you to write that the Polyplacophora dates back to prehistoric times, and there's a surviving species called the chitin, and had many plates for its outside body. And we see those in the fossil record quite regularly. Thank you.